everybody, it's Lori again, and welcome back to my kitchen. Hey you guys, we've been really busy in the last few months, and so I do apologize for the pause in content on the videos, but life just sometimes gets super busy, and I've had a hard time fitting it into my schedule and all of my responsibilities outside of doing the videos. So I do apologize. But today I am finding some time to record this video because I have a super wonderful recipe and canning project that I would love to share with all of you. And this recipe today belongs to Amber May, who is the founder of the S.N.U.G group on Facebook. It's a wonderful canning group of just kind and wonderful, helpful people. And I would like to extend the invitation personally to all of you to come and join our canning family on S.N.U.G. That's S.N.U.G, Canning to Preserve Our Future. Now, the recipe today, like I said, is authored by Amber May. And it is a wonderful recipe for stuffed pepper soup. And I just received an amazing blessing of a gift of just tons and tons of bell peppers. And so I looked through the group and I found this wonderful recipe and I gave it a try, and it is just absolutely fantastic. So I'd like to share the recipe with you today. And of course, y'all know me. I do things a little different and I make a few little changes, but I'm going to share the recipe as Amber authored it with you right now, okay? I got to look at my little notes. So for stuffed pepper soup, we will need 2 pounds of ground beef, 4 cups of onions chopped, salt and pepper to taste, 6 cups of sweet bell peppers, cleaned, peeled, and chopped, 6 cups of beef broth, 1 quart of diced tomatoes, 1/4 cup of tomato paste, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of dry basil, 1/2 teaspoon oregano, 6 cups of tomato sauce, and 1/4 cup of sugar. Now, like I said, I'm going to make just a little change here and there to this recipe. I'm not varying very much. But I wanted, instead of more of a soup where there's a lot of liquid in there, I kind of wanted it to be a hearty kind of a stew. It's still a soup, there's still liquid, but I did cut down on some of the amounts of liquid that I added and adapted the recipe to my own taste. And you can, of course, adapt the recipe to your own taste also. But for starters, we are going to brown our 2 pounds of ground beef with our onions. And I'm going to just add my salt and pepper to the pan before I start that cooking process. And like I said, salt and pepper is just to your taste. This does end up being a very large batch of soup. And take into consideration you have a lot of tomato product and you are going to have a lot of bell peppers in this. So don't be afraid of your seasoning. Be a little conservative if you want, and then when we get the soup all cooked up, you taste test it and you can add more if you want. But for right now, I just have my ground beef, my chopped onions, and salt and pepper in my pan, and we're going to get this all browned up really nice. And after that's done, I will be right back. All right, so my hamburger is browned and it's no longer pink, and my onions are cooked. My salt and pepper is in there. Now we're going to add our 6 cups of fresh chopped peppers. And by the way, I really want to give a shout out today to Susie. You know who you are, for this wonderful gift of peppers. And I also want to tell you, thank you so much for what you are doing to help your community. I know that you have so many other job responsibilities, and for you to take the time out of your busy work day to notify people that these things are available, you are the best. And from my heart, God bless you and thank you. All right, so we have our bell peppers are in with our ground beef, our cooked ground beef. Now, if your ground beef is a little fatty, you can feel free to drain off some of that fat. I had really lean ground beef, so I just don't even feel the need to drain any of that grease or that fat off. But stir your raw diced ground or your raw diced bell peppers or cut up or whatever. You know, they're not really diced. They're just, you know, whatever size chunks you want to put in. Large ones, small ones, whatever. Just keep in mind that you want that to fit on your spoon. So don't get them too super large so that it's difficult to eat. But anyway, we're going to put those fresh peppers in that, and I'm going to cap it up, and I'm just going to let those cook for about 3 or 4 minutes. And then we're going to come back and add the rest of our stuff for the soup. So I'll be back in just a few. All right, so I have allowed that to cook for about, I don't know, 3, 4, maybe 5 minutes, just to kind of partially cook those bell peppers. And now what we're going to do is just add the rest of our ingredients to this soup. And I have made just a couple of changes, just according to our taste. You can follow Amber's recipe exactly as she's written it, or kind of do like me and just kind of go by your own palate or what your family would like. So I have increased my garlic measurement. She, I believe, had 1 teaspoon, and I have increased to 3 teaspoons of garlic. And the oregano was, I believe, a ½ teaspoon, and I've actually increased that up to 2 teaspoons for our taste. Basil, I believe she had at 1 teaspoon, and I have doubled that to 2. And then I have just a little bit of this, it's called Complete Seasoning. I don't know if you can see it there. And it's kind of like a seasoned salt, okay? There's a bunch of different stuff in here. And I put a couple little shakes of that in there too. And I'm going to add just a touch of dry beef broth powder simply because I know the brand of beef broth that I'm using today just isn't very strong. And I really like that heavy beef flavor in the soup. So I'm just going to add a couple of teaspoons of that. And that's, you know, all of this is optional, you guys. You just go with what you personally enjoy and like the flavor of, and or just follow the recipe just exactly as Amber had it written. Now there was 6 cups of, I believe, tomato sauce in this. Let me look at my notes. Yeah, 6 cups of tomato sauce, and then also tomato paste. And a quart of diced tomatoes, which really makes it a soup, okay? You're going to have a lot of fluid and, you know, a smaller amount of solids. And I wanted mine, I'm going to turn this down here, guys. I wanted mine more like a hearty stew. And so I have decreased the tomato products. And what I am doing is I'm putting 1 quart of home canned what I call stewed tomatoes in. And I've got a mixture of actually peppers, onions, and I believe I have zucchini in with my home canned tomatoes. So I'm putting 1 quart of home canned tomatoes in there. And then I am putting in, let me read, 24 ounces of tomato puree, okay? Just because that is just a really good, strong tomato flavor, and it just adds a lot of heartiness to it. All right, so we've got my 24 ounces of puree in there, and then there was 6 cups of beef broth in the recipe, and like I said, that really leans it towards the soup, you know, very liquidy soup. And I have cut that down to just a single quart of beef broth, and I've just got one of these little boxes, and this is 4 cups or a quart, and that is what I have been adding to this, and it just seems to be coming out at just about the right consistency for me as far as, you know, the distribution of fluids and solids. I just really like how this turned out. So you just add all of that good stuff to your pan and then get it all stirred up. And you can see this is still plenty fluidy. It is still considered a soup, okay? But just reducing those items just by a little bit was where I was a little bit more happy with it. So I am going to allow this to simmer for about 10 to 15 minutes. And then we're going to get this stuff packed into canning jars and get it processing for long-term storage on the shelf. So I'm going to allow my soup to simmer, and I'll be back in just a little while. All right, guys, so my soup has been cooking. I think I let it go for like maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. And I have already taste tested it, and all of my herbs and spices are exactly where I want them to be. I do encourage you to always taste your soup and make sure that it is, seasoned the way that you want it to be. Now, after that initial cooking period, Amber's recipe calls for 1/2 cup of sugar, and I opt to put brown sugar in, and I just kind of eyeball it around approximately 1/2 cup of packed brown sugar. Now, that is optional too. You don't have to have that, but it adds just a little bit of sweetness, and it cuts down a little bit on the acid taste of the tomatoes. And so I really do like to add that to this soup. Now, because I am adding, in my opinion, when you are pressure canning any combination of meat and tomato product, a lot of times in the pressure canner, those items will scorch or burn. And with the additional sugar, that even increases that possibility. So if you're using a pressure canner, just be aware that this may scorch in the pressure canner. And because of that, I am opting to hot water bath my soup today. I'm going to hot water bath this soup for 3 hours. If you would prefer to pressure can it, it's 75 minutes for pints and 90 minutes for quarts. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn my soup off, and just like any other project, we are just going to get this hot soup into our jars and get our rims of the jars wiped and all of our lids placed. So nothing special about this. Of course, you're working with hot soup, so do be a little bit careful if you have, your jars at room temperature. You don't want to have any thermal shock. So kind of allow that jar to kind of acclimate to the heat of the soup before then just going ahead and completely filling the jar. And we are going to go to 1-inch headspace today with this soup. Oh, I also want to tell you that I had already made this recipe a few times before. I had a leftover quart in my refrigerator that I just added in the final cooking period here. I just took that quart of soup out and I added it to my pot. So I'm probably going to have a completed volume that's just a little bit more than what you will get from this particular recipe, just simply because I added a quart from my refrigerator. So we just go ahead and we fill to that 1-inch headspace. Wipe the rim of your jar really well to make sure there's no food particles on there, and then place your lid and your ring fingertip tight. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and fill the rest of my jars here. Okay, I need another lid. But as you can see now, we've got to just disregard 1 quart because I got that one out of my refrigerator. So out of this recipe, I have 3, 4, 5 quarts and 1 pint of soup for this one single recipe. All right, I am going to grab another canning lid and I'm going to get these hot jars into a hot water bath canner, and I'm going to water bath it for 3 hours. I'm going to do this outside on my Camp Chef 2 outdoor stove today to keep the heat out of the kitchen and to keep the mess out of the kitchen. And maybe once I replenish the water in my canner, I'll take you along on that. In a 3-hour hot water bath process, even if you have a lid on your hot water bath canner, your water does evaporate because you're doing it at a rolling boil the entire time. And so during a hot water bath process that's as long as 3 hours, you're going to have to replenish that water. And so what I do is I just get a pot of boiling water prepared and ready to add to that canner during the canning process. And I do that approximately once an hour. You know, I do keep the lid on my canner, but once an hour, I need to add more boiling water to my hot water bath canner. So I'll probably take you along at least on one of those replenishing times. But hot food items, hot canner. If you're going to work with cold food items, you start with a cold canner. But I've got my canner heating up outside and it's ready to get these jars in. So I'm going to go and get my final lid and get these in hot water bath canner. And I will be back in just a little bit. All right, guys. So my water level is getting a little low. And so I have brought a pan of water to a boil inside. And I'm just going to replace what has evaporated out of the canner and get that lid right back on. Now you never want to put cold water into that canner because you do not want to cool the process down. So make sure that you have boiling hot water when you add it to your hot water bath canner. All right, so we have another hour to go yet in the process. All right, so my 3-hour hot water bath period is over. These jars are still extremely hot. We just brought them in from the canner and they're not even sealed yet, so I'm just going to be really careful about how I'm handling them. But you can just see how absolutely lovely this soup is. You can see the peppers and the onions in there. There's plenty of meat and the spices and flavors are absolutely marvelous. So again, the author of this particular canning recipe is Amber May, like I said, from the S.N.U.G group on Facebook. Now I've canned about 4 batches of this soup. We've been eating stuffed pepper soup. I got a large gift of peppers, like I mentioned, and so we've been eating stuffed pepper soup as I make it and can it. We've just been kind of eating the leftovers for quite a few days. So I don't really want to open up another jar because we've eaten it quite a few days in a row. But this is one of the previous canned batches that I did, and you can just see how lovely it is. And depending on how much broth and tomato products you put in yours is, of course, going to depend on how thick your final product is. But we have just found this absolutely delicious, and I will be making this for many more years to come. Now, like I said, Amber May is the author. Amber and I and the rest of the admin team and all of the lovely members in the S.N.U.G group would like to invite you to come and join our canning family. That's on Facebook, S.N.U.G, S-N-U-G, Canning to Preserve Our Future. And we will welcome you with open arms and kindness, and we'll be there to help you with your canning journey if you have questions or anything like that. So come join us on S.N.U.G. As far as you and I are concerned, I would personally just like to thank you for joining me here on YouTube again today. I hope that you all have wonderful experiences in your kitchens and with your canning projects this next week. Please have a safe and a happy 4th of July weekend and holiday. Happy canning, everybody, and God bless you all.